America has replaced God with politics. As humans, we need religion. It is a factor of life. You cannot eliminate that from the human experience. In America, we used to have this foundation on biblical principles that gave us morality and gave us life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, as written in our founding documents. The religion, the foundation, the very focus of all of these things have changed, and not in a good way. In God We Trust seems like a distant memory in this country. Let's take a look at where we are and what we can do about it. Let's get started. Well, again, welcome back to Church Public. I'm glad you have joined us today. I thought of calling this something like Philosophy Friday, and a while ago I had Theology Tuesday, but that seemed too catchy, and we're going to talk about faith and culture, and we're going to talk about things that intersect where we are and where the culture is, and how do we deal with them? How do we deal with them as believers? How do we deal with them as followers of Jesus? And if you don't follow Jesus, maybe this helps you understand more about the realities of life, not just this life, but the life to come, because there is more than this life, as much as some people would like to believe there is not. So we continue to talk about that. You can check us out at churchpublic.com. You can check us out on all the socials. At ChurchPublic is the handle there. You can go to YouTube, search ChurchPublic as one word, and see the videos there. We hope to bring good content to you so that you can engage with the public square in a faithful, in a biblical, in a way that is helpful and not hurtful to this world. There is a lot going on right now, and I'm doing my best to meet that challenge. If you do feel like supporting, I really appreciate it. You can go to churchpublic.com/support and help us out there. If not, thank you so much for listening. You can share this, send it to some friends who might want to hear about it. Today we're talking about a topic that I think is really important, and hopefully it doesn't feel like too much of a philosophy class or theology class or history class, but I think it's important to know about these things. And I think it's important to understand that things have shifted radically in America. Some people are catching up to that, and some people, I think, want to ignore it in the Christian community, but we cannot ignore this. We have to lean into this because it's important, and it will affect the future of this country, maybe the world, at least your family and your community. This is not the time to pretend like these issues don't exist. This is the time to invest in your family, invest in your kids, invest in your friends, teach them about what is going on so that when they are ready, just as Peter says, they'll be ready to give an answer for the hope that they have. America has replaced God with politics. The church in England has been in decline for a long time for a variety of reasons, but America seemed to be the holdout and this Western civilization foundation of "in God we trust." And yet, as I just discussed, that seems to have gone away now in the last few decades. Rather rapidly, the church has declined. Church membership has declined. We talked about this the other day, but through about 1998, church membership was around 70% of those surveyed in America. That's a really high percentage. And yet at 1998 till now, just in the last 2 decades, it's dropped now to below 50%. That is a huge change. A 20% change is a really big change in the amount of people, and the vast majority of people that have left, or rather haven't signed up at all, are this younger generation. There are people who are now atheist or agnostic or spiritual but not religious. That's a category. They believe in something but not something that is the industrial religious complex or something, or the corporate religious structure. That's how some would define it. And that includes denominations. It includes mainline Christianity rather specifically. And yet, humans need religion. And even when, like, thinking way back to Nietzsche, when he proclaimed that God is dead, that sounds like a treatise on, like, God itself. But what he really was saying behind that, and in the rest of his document, it talks about the fact that there will be something that comes to fill the void of God. If you kill God, something will take its place. And in fact, that is what happens. We do need religion, and Christianity is a religion of morality, of peace, of kindness, of grace, of forgiveness, of mercy. All of those things are tenets to the faith because that's who God is in Christian view, in Christian theology. God is love, and God sent Jesus to be the sacrifice for sins, the things that we did wrong, so that we can have forgiveness for all the things that we do wrong and get to a place full of grace and love, because without that, we can't get there on our own. That's the quick theology of Christianity, right? This new religion is the one of factions and sides and demands absolute conformity. Any alternative view is viewed immoral. Now, hear that very specifically. It's not that you have a different idea about something and you can talk about this idea and you can talk about this idea and you can agree and you can disagree and you can come to an understanding, agree to disagree, or something like that. No, this new religion is about either you are a moral person or you are an immoral person. They don't necessarily put it in those terms, but that is how it plays out in reality when these things are applied. So if you do the wrong thing, say the wrong thing, or now even don't do the right thing and don't say the right thing, you are not just like intellectually wrong, you are morally wrong. In other words, you are evil. You are morally evil. And there's a big difference there. And the reason I make this distinction is because I've had this conversation with several people over the last short period of time that they just want to talk about things and they just want to argue the truths with people who don't agree. Unfortunately, in a lot of these situations, the typical style of debate where you put it up an idea and they put it up an idea and you decide which idea is better, that's not the debate that we're in. We're much past that, and that's why we have to consider this two religions, because they really are religious ideologies. On the one hand, again, you have the Christian ideology, which is based on the Bible and based on certain fundamental truths that we've had for millennia through Scripture. And then on the other hand, you have this new woke religion, this new woke agenda that is based on some new things and some Marxist and communist and socialist things. And I've gotten into that in the past, and we'll get into some of those specifics, but a lot of those are incompatible with one another, and we're not having intellectual conversations about them. If you are on one side or another, especially if you are on the side of this new religion, the other side is actually morally wrong and evil if they don't agree. So there's no talking about it. There's no compromise about it. It's either you agree or you don't, and you're banished. And this is the new political structure. It's more than just a fringe religion or a fringe ideology that is in some small colleges across America. No, it's in the government of America. It's in major corporations. It's all over in basically every aspect at this point. And this political structure is like a religious belief now. And you can tell this is the case because if you try to disagree with someone on an issue, you are banned from social media. You may be fired from your job. You may get kicked out of your school. These things are happening, and they're happening every day to people who disagree with this new religious ideology. So you know that it's more than, if I disagree, if it were just a functional dialogue or debate about an issue, you can think what you think and I think what I think, and at the end of the day, okay, I don't agree, you don't agree, let's just move on. That's clearly not what's happening. What's happening instead is the mandate that if you don't agree with me, you cannot be involved in the civil discourse really of public life, because as we've seen, the social media, the tech world, even the public square like your work or your school, if you don't agree, you can't be involved in it. And again, we're seeing this day by day by day. There are examples of this. And I've talked about some of them in the past. I'm not going to rattle through them right now. But every day I'm reading about someone else who is either kicked out of a school or kicked out of a business or kicked off of one of the social media companies because they said something that the mainstream is not agreeing with. This is the reality we're living in. It is not a fringe thing. It may sound extreme, but it is what's happening to America, and this new religious politic is all encompassing. And the reason we need to talk about it is it really is directly opposed to Christianity. Like it just is opposed to it because there are certain things that as a Christian you should not agree with. And just clearly in the Bible, it does not agree with. So you have to choose. You have to choose a side, and which side of this you are going to be on. So this vacuum of Christianity, as Christianity has left America in a sense, it's been filled with this weird Calvin-esque, puritanical, dogmatic politic that, again, you have to agree with. And in some sense, like, again, some of these ideological battles are just, they're just discussions that people are having. But some of them actually have devolved into actual war. And you see that across the country, and you've seen it in the past year. You've seen it across the country in certain cities where, cities in Seattle, for instance, and other cities in Oregon, where they've literally been at war with different ideologies for a year and more now. And there are other cities where this is happening, and you've seen it all across America, where there is a war over an ideological battle, like a physical battle of what is going on. And this is not a great this is not a great move for America to go into, to have these either small or big battles over ideology, like actual physical battles. Like that doesn't usually solve anything or bring down good. And now we see politicians who are actually calling for more confrontation, like Maxine Waters we saw the other day, who was saying you need to have more presence and have more confrontation in cities where you don't agree with what is going on in the justice system of America or in the structures of America. So the very politicians that are tasked with running the country are calling for regular people in the streets to rise up against the country, which on its face seems counterproductive, but this is what we're at, where this is, in essence, kind of a religious war. It's a really strange thing to consider, but this is what we see happening. It's being fought on all fronts. It started in the schools and the colleges, and for decades, students in America have been taught that America is an evil place run by evil people, and none are more evil than the white man. That's just what they've been taught. And so now they've graduated and they've taken over these institutions and governmental positions. And whatever you think of the George Floyd verdict, you have actual politicians like Ocasio-Cortez saying the justice system, the judge and the jury was, quote, not justice. The system is not working, end quote. So if you have politicians in one branch of government who are saying literally another branch of the government is not working, that we're going into a different thing. We're not talking about policy. There were no policies prescribed to change this. There were no ideas prescribed to change this. Instead, the stated goal is get rid of the whole system and start something fresh. What the fresh thing is, what the new thing is, there has been no proposal for that other than some, again, far-leaning people saying we should go to socialism, we should go to communism, those are better things, which, as history shows, are clearly not better things. I just want to put out there. But this religion of politics is winning over the actual politics of running the country. That's what we're seeing. It is now a religion. It is not a debate of ideas. It is believe what I'm saying, follow what I'm saying, or you're cast out into the utter darkness. To say that when the justice system goes through and the end of that justice system is not justice, that's not a political statement. That's a moral statement. It's a religious claim that this is not the place where things are working. So we have to, through our own effort, change something, or some bigger presence, I guess, even than the government, which I guess is, again, a religious claim. Something bigger than the government is saying that has to come in and change things. What we've heard over and over again are these claims of being un-American, and from both sides. And un-American is this religious statement now that is like heresy. It'd be the same as saying something like un-Christian. And I say that, and here's a great example of that. I've never heard someone say you're un-Norwegian, or you're un-Spanish, or you're un-Mexican, or you're un-British. You just don't hear those kinds of things because that doesn't make sense. And yet, almost every time a politician speaks, almost every time a celebrity speaks, there's some statement about being un-American. And that is the point here is it elevates this dialogue from being something political, because again, it's if it were political, you wouldn't say un-American, because it's just you're either American or you're not. And if you're American, you follow the system of America in politics, or you change the politics. To be un-American is to say, morally, you are not doing something that fits in with our morality. And that's a different statement than political, because political is supposed to be a different level. And we'll talk about the level of political speech in just a moment. Because America has been different, and it has been different for a long time. It is more of an ideology than a nation, because we're not bound together by a common heritage or a common race. We're bound together by this creed that comes from biblical values, that all men are created equal, that all people are in God's image, and therefore everyone deserves a chance at freedom, prosperity, as you heard from some of the founding documents, life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. That was written in because of that foundation of value based on how God sees you. It's not based on the value of where you were born or what ethnicity you are or any of those things. So the comparison to religion is really more appropriate. And this freedom, this peace, this unity that we started with the ideal of has been replaced by this intolerance. And I wrote down dogmatic fervor. Agree with me or you are cast out into the darkness. That's what I wrote down. Because yes, it used to be you can do whatever you want to do as long as it doesn't affect me. But now it's, if you don't agree with me, then that's violence towards me. So you have to be punished. And you see, like, that's a large shift. It is the freedom of individuality and expression. And then that moves into no freedom. You do need to agree with me or you're kicked out. And we're stuck in between these two worlds. And if you're in this, you think that one world is good and one world is not wrong, but one world is evil. And this traditional biblical side, you have original sin and atonement and ritual, and now you have this woke religion that took original sin, it took atonement and these rituals, and they've added, of course, excommunication. You get kicked out if you don't follow. The woke priests, the followers, they envision themselves as challenging the dominance of this nationalism, which I guess according to them, founded a country to promulgate racist ideas and slavery. And Christianity doesn't see it that way. Like Christianity, the goal, the telos, the end of Christianity is to have this promised land in heaven where God's kingdom is complete. God does his judgments that he needs to do. And the followers of God live in eternal harmony with God for eternity. The woke, instead, they have a concept of eternity, but theirs is a utopia that happens here on the earth, and it happens when all of the blocks to their utopia are removed and that sin is removed. But the only way they can remove that is to actually remove the people who embody the sin to them, rather than the way that Christianity handles it, which is, again, as I mentioned earlier, far different than that, and I would say more graceful. And when one of the chief priests, like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, died, hundreds and hundreds of mourners gathered outside the Supreme Court wailing as if something like their savior had been crucified. I don't know how else to categorize that. I don't know if you saw some of the videos of it, but there literally was wailing and gnashing of teeth, and it was like the end of their world when one of their leaders, I call it their priests, died. And politics are really important, and we should vote on them, and we should vote on the policies, and that is very important. And you can't get stuck on a person, because the people are going to let you down, and the people are going to do bad mistakes, whether it's Trump or Biden or whomever. Their personalities are not necessarily biblical, are not necessarily going to, agree with everything morally that you agree with. But like even this morning, I was reading about a Biden supporter who purports to be a Christian, and they were really disappointed that when Biden said he was going to be pro-life, and when Biden said he is a Catholic, so obviously he's going to value human lives, and yet he hasn't done that, and instead done lots of different things that actually promote abortion and help abortion and things like that. They were really disappointed that he didn't stick to his word. It would have only taken a cursory look at his almost 50 year political career to know that's exactly what he was going to do. And I was talking about that right before the election, just because clearly that's what he was going to do, even though at the moment he was saying he was a staunch Catholic and he was pro-life and he was all these things. He clearly wasn't going to act like that. And I feel sad for these people, these, again, Christians and believers who thought, oh, well, he's saying it now, so that's what he's going to do, and he values life. And he clearly didn't. And anyway, all that to say, like, you can't get too hung up on the person. You have to figure out what they're going to do with the power that they have, because power is very corrupting. And we've given politicians a lot of power. And this power leads them to places that is sometimes bad and sometimes ugly, and very often not in line with biblical values. And that's what we talk about here. Both of the parties play this game of religious or Christian politician or something like that. And the reality is most of them are not, but you just have to look again at the policies. That's kind of an aside here. But the point is that this politic has become more than just words, and it's become more than policies, and it's become more than systems. It's become this religion, this culture of values that we have in the Bible, like love God, love others, treat others the way you want to be treated, the 10 Commandments. In America, most of that is gone. It's much more Darwinian on the one hand, like kill or be killed, or it's maybe much more humanistic hedonism, where you do whatever you feel like doing. And I talked about that the other day. And again, some libertarians are saying, well, you do whatever you want to do as long as you don't hurt somebody else. But the reality is, if you go down the path of doing whatever you want to do, eventually you will hurt someone else, because you can't act out of all of your impulses and not run into other people around you. That's just basic like psychology and basic action and reaction. Like if you do everything you want to do, there will be people around you who are negatively impacted, because sometimes you don't think about other people if you're doing things for yourself. That's the, again, definition of selfishness. So, and of course, in this new religious politic, you take all the power that you can. And then conversely, if you see someone with power, you have to take all of their power away. And you can't have them having power over you, whether that's real power or perceived power. And in a lot of cases, this is perceived power. Those people must be brought down, just like the founders or our former heroes and the statues that have been taken down and the pictures that have been taken down all across America. You have to remove that power from the other system. And the false view is that you're removing the power because they shouldn't have that much power. But the reality is, as you can plainly see, the power, you want the power for yourself, and you want to have that power for yourself, and you don't want other people to have that power. And of course, we've seen none of this religious woke politics can satisfy. And we've seen that over the last year or so. If you say the wrong thing, if you do the wrong thing, you're canceled, and there is no forgiveness. There is no re-entering this temple of enlightenment. You're banished. You have to go forage in the weeds somewhere. And some people have called them deplorables or people like that. Like, you're labeled and banished out of the system. So this woke politics cannot fill that void in your soul. And some of us come to know this, some of us too late. Following God is the only thing that can fill that void inside your soul, because without God, as Paul says in 1 Corinthians 13, all of the things that you do are just a clanging cymbal. You might have these causes and these beliefs, and some of them might be good things that you're doing, but if you're not doing it for the right reasons, if you're not doing it because of the love of God or what God has done for you, then all that you're doing is just noise. And that's kind of harsh, but it's the way it is, because you can only extend your cause so far before you become selfish or, like, for instance, we've seen the leader of the Black Lives Matter group just bought some millions of dollars worth of homes recently. And yet she was put up as the martyr of this organization and the leader of this organization. And personally, I don't care. If you have $1 million, buy $1 million worth of homes. If you have millions of dollars, buy millions of, I don't care how many homes you have. It doesn't matter. But if you pretend like you are fighting for a cause and you're laying down your life for a cause, when instead you're getting rich off of it, that's where the people are going to notice and go, oh, that's not exactly how this thing is supposed to work. And religion is supposed to remind us that there's more. It's supposed to remind us that there's more going on in the world than just the physical things of the world. There's supposed to be knowledge, and in Christianity, it's knowledge that although there are troubles, eventually the troubles will cease and you will be at a place of peace and harmony in the presence of God. Instead, now, where politics is supposed to be literally the study of life and the things that happen and dealing with the things that happen in life. So it's supposed to be dealing with the things that are actually physically happening in the world. But now politicians, corporations, celebrities, academics have joined together to tell us that every decision you make, everything that you buy is supernatural. It's more than natural. It's a statement on good and evil. Like you have companies like Coca-Cola, Ben & Jerry's, Nike, the NFL, the MLB, all of these companies have said, if you act a certain way, if you do a certain thing, it's not just, hey, you should have bought our stuff. No, it's you are an immoral person or an immoral government or something like that. So we cannot, like, for instance, have our All-Star playoff game in your whole state because your whole state is immoral. Right? And that's where that's not a political statement. That is literally a religious statement. The whole state of Georgia has been banished because they changed some laws. The correct political response would be, I don't like the laws that you proposed. Here's a contrary proposal of laws. That is an equivalent political statement. The statement, you are an immoral government or a moral group of governors or however it came out, and we're leaving your state, in essence, you're excommunicated from this religion. Like that's the level of playing field that we're on. It's not politics anymore. This is so beyond politics. It goes into religion. That's why we have to talk about this today, because everything you do is not only political, everything you do now is religious. You have companies, again, like Coca-Cola, Ben & Jerry's, that are saying if you buy their stuff, you're doing well. And if you work for them, you have to say the right things. And then you have companies like Home Depot who did not say anything. And they just didn't say anything about it. And people are boycotting Home Depot because they didn't say anything. So now it's not even just you have to do the right things, you have to say the right things. If you don't say the right things, you're also excommunicated. That really is entering not only just a level of religion, but that's cultish, right? Like, to be in the cult, you have to say the things the cult wants you to say and say the things that the cult wants you to say. You can't even be silent about it. You are forced into this. If your actions or your inactions or your belief are judged as evil and you don't subscribe to this belief, then you are literally cast out into the cold. And this is why we have to talk about these things. We have to learn these things, and we have to understand how to respond to this in a Christian way, which is getting more and more tricky, because you realize that if your actions or inaction at this point are judged not just as a bad choice or as wrong, but as evil, you have to understand that this world and those that are running this world and those that are running this new religion are going to judge you if you don't get along and if you don't get on board. And it's not enough, just as I mentioned in this Home Depot example, it's not enough that you sit on the sidelines and pretend not to be involved. It will come for you at some point, and it will get to that point where you will have to say something. And even if you don't say something, then you're cast into the side that is evil and wrong. And this is it is coming. I'm just saying this is coming. I don't mean to sound like gloom and doom, but this is just the reality of the separation of religion and politics that is happening. And there is a couple of sides. There are a couple of sides that are going on here, and you're going to have to choose. I hope again that you choose the side of belief in God that supersedes all of this, because God was here before this. God was here before America. God will be here after America. So I'm not worried about it, and I'm not worried about where this is going in the eternal sense. If you follow God, no matter what happens on earth, you're going to keep following God. But as far as it depends on us, we want to live in this world. We want to influence this world. We want to help this world understand actual truth and not this weird truth that's not real, and this invented religion that is not real. So we need to know how to do this. We are a nation of believers. America is a nation of believers. It's not a nation of ethnicity like other nations. It's not a nation based on birth or birthright. It is a nation of belief. That belief used to be based on something outside of ourselves, that biblical foundation that promotes unity, promotes freedom, promotes individuality, and promotes people to get along. Now the belief has shifted, as I've talked about, and that belief is you have to agree with our beliefs or you can't be part of this America. And that's where you get to this place where people will call you un-American if you don't agree with the way they're doing it. This may or may not bode the end of America as we know it. America may be over in that sense, ideologically. We'll see. I don't know. But all I can say is I hope that you continue to follow after God. I hope that you educate your family, your kids, your friends, anyone that will listen about these things, and specifically about following God, because this is the most important thing. If you follow after Jesus, if you learn what it means to be a follower of Jesus, if you practice that, and if you speak the truth in love and with grace everywhere you can, this world is going to come for you, because the Bible, as Jesus, Paul, many of the disciples and apostles said, this world is going to be against you if you stand up for Christ. And more so, as we see the religion of this new, whatever it is, woke America come to fruition, and it is growing by the day. If this continues to grow, and it is antithetical to Christianity, as it continues to grow, you're going to have more and more confrontations with it. And I don't mean that in a physical sense, but you're going to have confrontations trying to figure out if these two beliefs don't fit together and can't get along and cannot compromise, then how do we live in the same place? How do we do this? Well, we're going to have to know what we believe really strongly. It's very important that you know what you believe, you know why you believe it, that you teach your kids what you believe and why they believe it, that you really develop this sense of truth. Again, as Peter said, to know the hope that you have and give an answer for it, you need to be ready to give that answer. Like you really, really do. And then you need to pray for the nation, pray for the leaders, pray that individuals and families and then communities come to real faith in Jesus. That's the only way forward. America is not really the answer. It's been a great place for religious freedom for a few centuries now. It's not the answer to salvation. It never has been. It was just a place where freedom could be expressed and the worship that we have of God could be expressed. That may or may not be coming to an end. At the very least, it's changing, and it's changing drastically and quickly, and you need to know about that. So I hope this has been helpful for you. If you have any questions, send them my way. I do pray that God blesses you in this, and I pray that you keep the faith.